Thank you all so much. It is wonderful to be here with you. As Matt mentioned, my name is Jesse James Garrett. I have been working in the technology field for about 30 years now. And it was about 20 years ago that I first met the founders of NetLife. And we first started talking about what it would be like to throw a big design conference in Norway and what it would be like for me to come and join you here. And so it's so wonderful to see that dream finally become a reality after so many years. So as I mentioned, I've been working in technology for a long time. I've done a lot of different things over the years. Many of you know me because of the company that I founded back in 2001, a company called Adaptive Path, which we started back when nobody really knew what this work was, what it was about, what it could do. And we set out to kind of help educate people and to elevate the field. And here we are all these years later. Another reason that you might know me is because of this thing. It started as a diagram. I then turned it into a book called The Elements of User Experience. Over the last 20 years, a lot of other people have had their own ideas about how to visualize these ideas. So if you've seen any of that stuff, that was all mine too. These days, I'm a leadership coach. I work directly with leaders all around the world, leaders of design teams, helping them unravel the challenges of design leadership. This talk is called Bridging the Gap. And it's about creating true partnership between product and design. And some of you might be wondering, what gap? What are you talking about here? Now, as a coach, I get to talk to a lot of people, again, mostly design leaders. And one of the central issues that I work with my clients on is their relationships with their bosses, their relationships with their peers, with the members of their teams. But when I talk about their relationship struggles, there is this one relationship that comes up over and over and over again. Of all of the partners that a design leader has to engage with, it is their product partner that is the one that they are by far most likely to have trouble with, most likely to be challenged to find common ground and find common success. Now, why should this be? Why aren't we better partners? What's breaking down here? So when I'm talking about the gap, I'm talking about the space between product and design that prevents us from creating true partnership. So as this issue was coming up over and over again in my coaching work, I decided to go out and get some more information and find out what was going on here. So I went out to the social networks fishing for complaints. And so I had two questions for people. First of all, I asked people, what are the biggest complaints that design people have about product people? And then I asked, what are the biggest complaints product people have about design people? And like a good user researcher, I took it all in and tried to synthesize and make sense of it. And this is what I've come up with. So the important thing for you to remember about what I'm about to say to you is these are not my opinions, necessarily. Some of them might be. I'll let you figure out which ones I feel most closely aligned to. But this is really a synthesis of what I've heard across so many conversations over the years about the way that product and design perceive each other. In other words, this talk is full of stereotypes, generalizations, and prejudices. My hope is that everyone in this room, at some point during this talk, feels terribly mistreated by me. Because what this talk really is a guided tour of the mind traps that come with doing this work. The ideas and the patterns of thinking that undermine our ability to see each other clearly and partner effectively. Now, once again, I don't exclude myself from any of these mind traps. I have definitely fallen into a few of them over the course of my career. But the real starting point for this talk for me came from one conversation. I met for the first time, had dinner with someone from the product side who'd been in the business for a very long time, had launched enormously successful products that people all around the world have heard of and use every day. And so, because this was already on my mind, I asked him, from his perspective as a product leader, where was the breakdown in the relationship? And this is what he had to say. The designer is the person in the room with the least empathy for the user. Now, if you've been, like me, working with and among designers for 20 years, this statement was like a punch in the stomach. Because this is the way we talk about ourselves as champions of empathy, right? This is the whole point of us. Our whole value, our whole existence is based on this. So how could we be getting this so wrong? How could we be so misunderstood? So let's get into it. What is the trouble with design people anyway? Well, the trouble with design people is they're snobs. They are people of exceptional and refined taste who must be very, very patient with everyone around them all the time who just don't know as well as they do. They absolutely know better than other people. They have better taste than other people, and therefore nothing is ever good enough. So for a lot of designers, a career in design is an opportunity for you to weaponize your dissatisfaction with the world for fun and profit. Designers are defined by their dissatisfactions. You hear people talk about their career narratives, and over again, it's like they had some point of frustration, of realization that the world could be better, and they could potentially seize the power to change it. But if you're not as dissatisfied with the world as your design partners are, if you don't share that sense of deep unhappiness with the way things are, you might have trouble seeing eye to eye. And you might find yourself the target of their dissatisfaction. So yeah, if you're a product person, do we have any product people in the room, just by the way? Thanks for showing up, we appreciate it. So that secret suspicion that you have long held, that your design partners look at you with just that tiniest degree of disappointment, pity, contempt, it's all true. Your design partner does not want to be working with you. You've got entirely the wrong attitude about this. What they want is somebody who is as dissatisfied with the world as they are, maybe even more so. In fact, I would say that most designers would say their ideal client looks a lot like Steve Jobs. He understood design because he was more dissatisfied with everything than anyone. So they want you to be more like Steve. They want you to be unhappy. They want you to be dissatisfied. And if you're not dissatisfied, maybe you aren't trying hard enough. You see, it's all part of the designer's master plan to elevate all of us to their level. Even more than a better designed world, they want a world that better appreciates design. In the field, we call this driving design maturity. And so designers see endless opportunities to elevate the people around them by stoking their dissatisfaction and moralizing. This becomes the way that they talk. This becomes the way that they engage. What are the principles that you're not upholding here? How can we do that a little bit more? But you know, it isn't easy being a design person. There are a lot of challenges associated with it too. So let's look at the challenges that design people face. I think the biggest one, honestly, is this one, which is that design is a calling to be in service to others. This is profound. It's a part of all of the rhetoric that we hear about design in the world. And it runs deep in the heart of every design person. And this sounds like a pretty great thing to have, right? So why would I describe it as a challenge? Well, that's a pretty heavy burden to bear, to follow a calling. In fact, it's such a heavy burden that designers want to share that burden with the people around them. So they're idealists, and their idealism runs deep. And this can be a challenge to uphold that idealism on an ongoing basis. And that idealism is not just about the outcomes that we create in the world. That idealism also extends to their own processes and where they get to engage in the design process, in the entire product development process. Because in a lot of cases, what product people call design is actually only the second half of what a designer thinks their ideal process is, right? So much of the arguing and the tug of war between product and design happens in those early phases: discovery and definition. The fear that comes up for these idealists is, I can't possibly be doing deep and meaningful work. I can't possibly be delivering the true value of design if there's a whole set of processes that I'm not allowed to participate in. Because that's where the real power of my work is. But often, the context that they find themselves in don't allow for that. And the people who are enforcing those processes in those contexts are their product partners. So let's talk about the trouble with product people. Now, I have to talk a little bit about Agile because it's been such a force in our development processes over the last 10 years or so. And a lot of people see UX design and Agile as being in opposition. But I don't actually see it that way, because if you look at where the intention behind these processes, these weren't created by product people. These were created by engineers to do better engineering work in order to keep decision-making as close as possible to the people who were actually doing the work, who were actually making the product. But when you add product people into the mix, you get a different equation. Product takes power away from the people who are actually making the product. Product is not a craft discipline the way that design and engineering are. Product is a management discipline. So the rise of product then undermines this original goal of keeping the power close to the people making the product, taking decision-making out of the hands of the craftspeople and vesting it in a functionary installed by leadership to keep all these unruly creative types in check. A bureaucratic obstacle at best, and at worst, empowered by capitalism for capitalism. And even if that's not the kind of product partner you have, you still have the challenge that they don't come from a craft tradition the way that your engineering partners do. They don't come from a discipline that instilled in them the concept of mastery. And mastery matters a lot to people who come out of craft disciplines, because mastery is how you prove you should have more power, you should have more authority, by demonstrating your ability to control your craft. But then we look across the table at our product partners. They haven't had to master anything. They could just jump straight to that seat of authority. And so if you're a designer or an engineer, if you come out of a craft tradition, out of a craft discipline, you might look at this product partner and feel like that's a cheat. But there's an even deeper level to this, because mastering a craft means internalizing the values of that craft. Again, think of your engineering partners. It has values built into it: stability, reliability, scalability. Design has its own values too. Humanity, for one. Those values add up to a philosophy of what good work looks like, of what good process looks like, of what a well-crafted product is. But product people, not coming from a craft discipline, have never had to internalize the values of a craft discipline, and that makes them susceptible to influence in ways that may be harmful and counter to the intentions of being user-centered. Which means that product people are the most critical failure point in our attempts to limit harm. Behind every scandalous effort to cheat, manipulate, exploit, and defraud users, there was a product person in a meeting advocating for it and doing everything they could to make it real. Now, that's a lot. So let's look at the product person's challenge. Now, we as designers, we love to talk about collaboration and harmony and consensus building and all of those kinds of things. This stuff does not fly when it comes to accountability. The executives need to have somebody to fire if it all goes wrong. And that's your product person. If you're a product person, people actually only know if you're doing a good job if you're shipping, because you don't own any of the pieces of it. You can't point to anything that you did. All you can say is, well, the team got across the finish line. Most product people are chasing what feel like cheap and flimsy metrics because nobody's offered them anything better. So when shipping features is all your boss notices, that becomes all you talk about, and that becomes all you do. Because as a product person, you are at the mercy of everyone. You can directly affect very little, but you're on the hook for all of it. All you can do is hope that the team does the thing you're asking them to do. So they can't let any one point of view, design or engineering or sales or anybody else, influence things too much. They have to keep it all in balance. But keeping it all in balance means you literally can't please everyone all of the time. So you are eternally, perpetually in the disappointment business. Product people are coming out of every meeting thinking about who's going to be disappointed with the outcome here. Which means by coordinating everything and owning nothing, product managers find themselves in the trade-off management business. And this is the essence of the role, an endless series of desperate calculations made with never enough data and never enough time. Okay. So, we've looked at it from both sides now. The design side, the product side, a lot of different gaps to bridge here. But this, I think, is the main one. The principal gap, as I see it, is the principal gap. What product people really want to know is, when they're sitting across from a designer, they really want to know, do you care about the success of this product as much as I do? The worry that they have is there's no product a design person won't sacrifice for a principle. Designers would rather see your whole company burn than violate the holy tenets that they learned in design school. And what design people really want to know from their product partners is, do you care as much about doing right by people as I do? The worry in their minds is, there's no principle a product person won't sacrifice for a product. They will happily look the other way at the consequences for their users if it means they get to move their key metric. So how do we bridge this gap? It has to happen from both sides. For design people, it means letting go of a little principle in the name of shipping. For product people, it means taking a more principled approach to what you ship. So I have a little bit of advice here. A bit of advice for design people. First of all, that horse you're on is too high. Get down off it. Now, it may seem that this shouldn't be an issue here in the land of Janteloven, but it is still a challenge in the culture of design itself. We don't do enough to cultivate a sense of what constitutes good enough. You will always care more about the details. You will always see more opportunities than your partners do. The question is, can you be okay with that? When you're engaging with your product partners, trying to make the case for these things that are hard to measure, the best way to do that is know the trade-offs that they entail. Being familiar with all of the factors that your product partners actually have to balance in their roles. Because what product people most desperately want from design people is the recognition that everything they ask for comes at a cost to something else. Now, I have a couple of pieces of advice for product people in here as well. Make room for intangibles. There is more to what we create than what we can measure. All of your instincts and all of the pressures put upon you may be pushing you towards strategies that prioritize what you can quantify, what you can prove, what you can justify. But there is so much more here for you to embrace along with your design partners. See, I'm already getting them mixed up. By opening that conversation, by being willing to have that conversation, you can demonstrate that you care about the same things. Because that's what they want to know. They want to know that you care. And what they really want to see, they want to see you show a little spine. Stand up for something. Anything. designers would love to see product people say no to the business for some reason that isn't the most expedient or self-serving choice. What I'm talking about here is the concept of integrity. I want to read you a quote from the American psychologist Brené Brown. She has done a lot of research on notions of integrity and trust. And this is her definition of integrity. She says, integrity is choosing courage over comfort, choosing what is right over what is fun, fast, or easy, and choosing to practice our values rather than simply professing them. What design people are desperate to see from product people is integrity. Now, a little bit of advice for everyone. Turn towards the center, not towards the extremes. Don't try to draw hard lines between product and design. Blur those lines. Prioritize shared goals, not horse trading arrangements. Because the truth is, a lot of product processes now have been inspired by the work that we've done as designers. User research strategy, user needs analysis, customer journey mapping, all of this stuff that used to be solely the domain of design, yeah, product people are doing that too, because product done right is user-centered. And at the same time, as much as we see ourselves as user advocates, we must maintain the balance in the same way that our product partners do, because design done right is product-minded. If you're only advocating through the user lens, you are only solving half the problem. Finally, if things are really breaking down and you've got two teams that are just at each other's throats, blame your bosses. And I say this to you as a leadership coach. In general, and this doesn't just apply to product and design, actually. You can see this all over the place. The organizational mistrust begins with personal mistrust. It begins with personal mistrust at the leadership level. If your head of product and your head of design don't get along, that is going to have a cascade effect down both organizations and set both sides up for an adversarial relationship. It is on leaders on both sides to drive a culture of mutual understanding within their teams and drive that cross-functional partnership. It is ultimately a leadership challenge. So remember the mind traps. Remember that these are exaggerations on purpose. If you felt that parts of these talks reflected something true for you, remember that there might be somebody else in the room for which that sounded like the most obscene mischaracterization they could imagine. The whole truth is much bigger than this. And so I want to leave you with one final word, and it is this. This is the English word reconcile. I find it a particularly powerful word. It has a lot of different meanings in English, in fact. In the context of financial bookkeeping, it means to bring accounts into agreement. In decision-making, it means finding alignment between multiple perspectives. It also means, for each of us personally, finding a state of emotional acceptance with what is really true. And lastly, in community, it means restoring friendship and harmony between people. We must reconcile ourselves together and individually, turn towards each other, turn toward the shared truths that our different perspectives reveal if we are to stay out of the mind traps and create true partnership between product and design. Thank you all so much for your attention. If you find yourself faced with these challenges, you can find more about my coaching practice at that first URL right there. I also do a podcast with my friend Peter Merholtz called Finding Our Way. You can find lots more good stuff in there as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jesse. That was a fantastic talk, Jesse. Yeah, it was entertaining and to the point. Mm-hmm. And maybe a little provoking to some people in the audience.
I hope so.
Yeah, that's how it should be. So, as you mentioned, Adaptive Path, you were heroes for us 20 years ago. You were the stars on the UX sky. So, but then suddenly you sold your company to a bank. What happened?
Well, so it's true. In fact, this month is the 10th anniversary of the acquisition of Adaptive Path, and it was something that took a lot of people by surprise. It was an opportunity to amplify our impact, I felt, because we were, trying to lead from the outside for so many years and trying to encourage large organizations to take up the ideas that we were putting out. And we were making good progress for a very small team. But Capital One offered us the opportunity to join them just as they were creating an integrated enterprise-level design group for the first time. And for us to be able to really shape the culture of that organization from the start. And so this was an exciting opportunity to hopefully create an example for other enterprises to follow in embracing design and embracing user-centered practices. And 10 years later, Capital One Design is huge. It's even bigger than it was when I left.
Okay.
And I feel like they're still doing great work out there.
Cool. Thanks. But you moved on.
Yeah.
Now you're a coach,
yeah.
A leadership coach.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk a lot and write a lot about product and design, and that is great. But do you think product actually represent a new way of thinking compared to the classic user-centered design, or is it just a new wrapping?
Yeah, well, I think that, as I mentioned in the talk, I think we do, as designers, tend to underestimate the extent to which product people really do see things exactly the same way we do. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the product, the evolution of product management, as I've seen it over the last 20 years or so, has been toward becoming more and more and more user-centered. And some of the things that Teresa was talking about this morning were really about how do we take those user-centered practices and make them real in a product management environment. I think that what product brings to the mix that maybe is a little more challenging for design to embrace are the systemic implications of the experiences we intend to create. The implications for development process, the implications for revenue, the implications for go-to-market strategies, and all of these other things that designers tend to kind of want to go as far as visualizing the thing and then kind of leave the rest of it to somebody else.
Yeah. So, and you talk a lot about the conflicts between product and design as today.
Yeah.
But and you meet a lot of different companies, different teams. Do anybody get it right? Do you have any examples?
Oh, no.
Oh. Okay.
Somebody is getting each individual piece right? There are good examples for lots of different aspects of it out there. The trouble is that it's so huge. Yesterday, Jacob Nielsen talked about how it used to be that you could fit the entire field in a room smaller than this one. And now there is so much work going on, and there's so much diversity to the range of different kinds of products being created, the range of different kinds of audiences and use cases being served, and frankly, the range of different kinds of experience that product managers are bringing that has value beyond simply being able to coordinate a process effectively.
Yeah, but it seems like you talk about product people and and design people.
Yeah.
My experience is that a lot of the product people, they also they have been designers and changed their role.
I love the fact that we have more and more designers taking on product roles, because I do feel like where designers have complaints about product, it's that the product people don't bring enough of a kind of a design mindset to the work. Yes, I agree with you. We're seeing more and more people who are kind of coming up through design and then moving into product.
And not the opposite.
But no.
No, because product people, they don't know a craft, as you said.
Well, that's not to say they can't learn, of course.
So, of course, we have to touch on AI. So, so what's your take on the use of AI in product development and user experience work?
I have to echo a lot of the things that have already been said here at this conference in terms of it's not going to lead to a dramatic reduction in workforce. It is going to lead to a significant shift in what's expected of people. I think, you know, trying to use it as a shortcut for the more human elements of our work is a mistake. I think that it really is going to be about design and product people both being able to look at the shape of the problem itself and identify which aspects of the problem an AI can definitely help them with and which parts they need to keep. Keeping the human in the loop is so key for some of this stuff. I think that I'm seeing a lot of interesting work being done with AI as an ideation tool rather than as a shortcut to delivery.
Yeah.
And so thinking of it more as an input to your creative process rather than a shortcut around it.
So you don't think that a really evil product manager would replace the designer with just a AI?
Oh, they would try.
Okay.
They would try. I just, I don't think it's going to be successful.
Oh, okay. Cool. Thank you very much. Give it up for
Thanks,
Jesse
everybody.
James.